Welcome back to another episode of Strip by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am very excited. Also, sorry, I almost go into things and not introduce myself. So, hello again. My name is Steph Sia. I am your host every single week. I am a former exotic dancer. My stage name was Kimchi. It was great. Also a digital content creator and I guess spreader of sex work, education, and things on the show. So hopefully you'll learn something new today. It's new episodes every Sunday. But enough about this little spiel. I want to introduce the fabulous guest that I'm bringing on to the show. She's a friend of mine. She goes by the name of JordanKensley. You may have heard about her, especially if you're listening and you are a pole dancer. She's a very, very well-known pole dancer. Also, a huge activist. I sometimes have trouble just keeping up with everything that's going on. So that's why I just decided to invite her onto the show today to talk about what's up, because there are a lot of things that are going on in America right now. The elections just passed. At the time of recording, there's a lot of things happening on Instagram that you may or may not have been aware about in terms of shadow banning, censorship. Gosh, there's just a lot of stuff that we need to cover today. Jordan, are you even there?
Yes. What's up?
Hello. It's so great to have you on to the show. Again, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Yes, thank you for having me and being interested in the nonsense that I have to say. I'm very excited about it.
We are going to make a lot of sense out of the nonsense today. So I feel like I might have butchered your intro. Can you tell?
You did great.
Did I do okay?
You did great.
I just feel biased.
It was short, to the point. It was perfect.
Yay.
You said my name correctly, so that's all I care about.
Perfect. You're welcome. But I don't want to take that away from you. I want you to be able to define to the audience who you are, what you do, in your own words, on your own terms, and go.
Okay, on my own terms and my own words. My name is JordanKensley. I'm a Gemini Sagittarius. I've been pole dancing since about 2011, 2012, one of those two. At this point, I feel like it's so long, I don't really remember. And I started pole dancing actually by stripping, because at that point there weren't very many studios available to really anybody outside of the major cities.
What?
So I started stripping in order to learn how to do pole dancing, and that is how my journey started. And then I moved to Los Angeles, and I found a pole studio.
Yay.
Found a stripping job, did my muggle job, and away we go.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so almost 10 years later, I'm one of the top exotic instructors for pole in the world.
Yes.
I tour internationally teaching specialty workshops to hobby studios, and occasionally I'll do guest judging or guest performances in both strip clubs and in pole competitions or showcases.
Yes.
And since as of recently, apparently now I'm also an activist, which is an interesting term, because you're not the first person to call me that. But for me, I just feel like, again, I'm using my loud voice to just tell people about issues that I care about. But for me, it doesn't feel like activism. It just feels like, why doesn't everyone else care about this?
Totally. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, right? And those things are like issues within the pole community in terms of race and equality and all of those issues that we're seeing mirrored in today's society as well. I feel like that's consistently perpetuating every industry and every hobby that you could possibly have. So that's a big one for me right now.
Absolutely.
And then, as always, sex work, and again, the racial and gender inequality there, and then also just the issues of how regular society sees sex work, and all of the nuanced conversations there.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so...
How do you want to get into this all?
What should we talk about? I mean, the election's pretty much on everyone's mind, so we can go from the election to shadow banning and why Trump is still awful and America's still a mess.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they just finished counting. I was like, what is going on?
I'm
What's
glad
happening?
that you know how to count. That's nice. So,
Math is great, friends.
yeah, because I feel like in 2016 when we counted, we just counted incorrectly and we ended up with Trump. And then we did like a recount. We were like, oh wait, it's fine. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Fast forward to America today.
Oh my gosh. Jesus Christ. I don't know what you guys have been through, but it's been obviously my podcast here is based in Canada, but there are a lot of listeners that are in the States as well. So yeah, if you wanted to go into a little bit about that, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, just a smidgy, just to kind of catch people up, and then we can go into how it's really affecting Instagram and the shadow ban, keep things on topic. So otherwise I'll
for sure
shout forever about how Trump is the worst and Mitch McConnell should just not have his job anymore, but that's fine. Anyways, fast forwarding. So if you're keeping up with the election in America, then you pretty much know that our media stations and our society has been very divided for a number of reasons. The big one is our president.
Yes.
Some people think he's extremely well qualified and a person of the people, which for me is insane because usually those people are also Christian.
Yes.
And he doesn't very much hold Christian values, in my opinion.
No.
But that's, c'est la vie. So the other half of that is people who don't think Trump is good at his job.
Yeah.
Like the rest of the world.
Yes.
And it's insane. Unfortunately, with the rise of Trump and his racial rhetoric and the way he pins people and different minorities against each other, uses the current economic state of most individuals as a reasoning that other people are in the wrong, really, when in fact it's been his fault for 4 years now, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. But that rhetoric has been able to perpetuate and permeate not only other societies. If you look at Peru, if you look at Lebanon, if you look what's happening at Hong Kong, Ireland has issues. Like everywhere, I think Canada, you guys even have an uprising in like very conservative, like not really good people.
Yeah,
kind of just showing up out of the woodwork.
Yeah, which is shocking to me. I was like, where were you guys before? Like, I'm sorry, like,
right?
It's just crazy. It's just like, where did you guys all come from?
Yeah, I blame Trump, and you guys can too. I feel like everyone does.
I'm on that train.
But, yeah, he's the worst. So with that, he has actively, even as president, been spreading false information that scientists and other industry professionals have very clearly come out to say the opposite, that he's wrong, this is the correct information, what have you. The problem with that is now our social media platforms have since taken it upon themselves to ban any form of media that has to do with the election, or come up with a warning on any sort of thing that you're sharing that has to do with the election, depending on if you're on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram.
I did see some of that, actually. Any post that had election or something to do with the election, they're like, are you sure you want to share this? Please verify this news. Okay, so yeah, we have been affected by that here in Canada as well. Weird.
Yes. So that's primarily because of how often Trump and his supporters share false information that fits their narrative but doesn't fit the science.
No. Oh my gosh, this is so frustrating.
Yes, it's a whole thing. So because of our president's inability to control himself when spreading false information so that he looks better, even though it's terrible for our entire country and essentially the world, because of the impact that we have as a country, it's fine. Instagram and Facebook have taken it upon themselves to ban certain things. Facebook is a little bit more lenient, again, just sharing are you sure you want to post this kind of warning before you are allowed to share. Instagram has taken it upon itself to ban all recent hashtags, regardless of what they're of, to stop the spread of false information. So you can see this on your Instagram, if you're at home listening right now, by going to your Instagram, going to the search bar, typing in whatever your heart desires in terms of a hashtag, and then going to the hashtag section on like the search bar. And click on any of those photos, depending on how often your hashtag is used, you'll either see photos or you won't see any photos, but at the top there will be a little banner basically stating that all recent hashtags have been disabled, and you will not be able to see them because of misinformation spreading too rapidly on the platform.
That is wild to me. That's, oh my God. I just can't believe that has happened, and they can control that.
Yeah, it's insane. Well, I mean, I feel like sex workers have known that Instagram has been able to control people and censor accounts.
Can you speak? Yeah, can you speak a little bit about that? Because there are a number of civilians that listen to the podcast too that are probably unaware of what shadow banning is, what this type of censorship entails. So, yeah, did you want to speak a little bit about the censorship of sex workers and even like the pole dancing community?
Yes, absolutely. So the big thing with Instagram is, especially since the algorithms have been more prominent in recent years,
Yes.
I think it's been almost 4 years since the first censorship started happening or started noticeably happening.
Yeah.
Instagram has taken it upon itself to use the algorithm against women, people of color, the LGBTQ community, the disabled community, primarily focusing on any type of body positive profile, including sex positive profiles.
Right.
So the issue with that is that primarily sex workers are the most body positive and sex work positive accounts on the internet.
Yes, we are.
Rightfully so. It's our job. We don't give a shit. You're paying us to look naked and beautiful. Like,
exactly. That's what we do.
Right? And
That's
I think in sex work especially, we're like, yeah, everybody's beautiful. There's definitely going to be someone out there willing to pay you for everything you are. You are definitely someone's type. So like in the sex work industry, I don't feel like there's as much stigma on what type of body is being presented,
of course.
Whether it's a trans body, a thin body, a larger body, a black body, a brown body. Like there's long hair, short hair, no hair, like super femme to super mask, anything in between. In sex work, there's very clearly some type of fetish and fetishization, as I'm sure your other podcasts have gone over.
Oh, yes. So, like, lots of that.
Right. So everybody wants to pay for something, you know?
Yeah, of course.
And with that, unfortunately, in our history as a society, and this is mostly worldwide, we don't allow women to be sexually expressive. And part of that is because we do have a lot of power within our sexuality in terms of manipulation and control and persuasion. And it's a very veiled type of power, whereas masculine power tends to be very physical, very active, very dominant in your face.
Very aggressive. Different kind of energy.
Yes, totally. And everybody, in my opinion, has both a femme and a masc energy about them, and it's just about who's able to harness what that works for them. And again, that's basically sex work 101. We have the full spectrum of everything for you.
It's okay. We need those refreshers every now and then, so thank you for that.
Right? Sorry. Again, I just assume that civilians don't know anything. So if you're hearing this again and you're like, yeah, no shit, like, this message is not for you. So what Instagram has done, and again, because we've actively censored and shamed femme bodies for most of the recent centuries, that as far back as we can really remember, it has now evolved to online censorship as well.
Right.
And that's it's kind of an interesting issue, because it delves into the issue of freedom of speech and how does that, and freedom of art, and how those affect Instagram, which is both a platform for speech and art.
Yes.
And but at the same time, because it's a private platform, it's able to be
like restricted,
more strict. Yes, more strict and restrictive in
exactly
what it's allowing and disallowing. And because of the society's hatred of women, when the algorithms were created and activated and implemented into the system, it automatically targeted sex work accounts,
yes,
women's accounts, femme accounts, anything and sex work specifically was targeted first and the hardest across the board. Whether you're a femme or a mask sex worker, you were probably fucked over.
Oh yeah,
and still being fucked over.
Yeah, wave number 2 is what I want to call it, but we'll get into that later. Continue.
So many tangents. So with that algorithm activating into the Instagram accounts and the hashtags, it started not only banning hashtags, but it started banning the users of the hashtags.
Yes.
So if you were using, so it would first ban, let's say, Sunday Bum Day. It's a very common
Sunday Bum Day
hashtag that's used. Yep. Pole dancers use it. Yogis use it. Sex workers use it. Pretty much if you have a bum and you've been on a Sunday, you have a Sunday Bum Day.
Yeah.
So
I missed that hashtag.
Yes. So the hashtag started getting flagged because of how often people were reporting the different images with that hashtag that came up on like the home search bar of Instagram.
Right.
Where it's just like, here's some random accounts that you may or may not follow. Look at this butt. And the number of people that started reporting those photos, again, usually sexually empowered women.
Yep.
And sex workers.
Yes.
The more often those photos were, oh fuck my brain, I'm sorry. I'm just like
that's
off
okay.
already in the next sentence. The more often that those photos and those accounts were flagged, the more often the hashtag got flagged. And eventually what ended up happening is, fast forward, the number of accounts that are flagged and those photos that are flagged and those hashtags are flagged, not only is the individual who's using the hashtag fucked over and shadow banned from the hashtag, meaning that if I use on one of my photos Sunday Bum Day, and I'm already shadow banned or I've been flagged multiple times before, my photo will no longer appear on that hashtag. You will not be able to see it, regardless of if you're following me or not. And on vice versa, Instagram has also taken to banning entire hashtags like Sunday Bum Day. And that really came into a wide public view outside of the sex work industry maybe a year or two ago, when the pole industry had like a whole fit.
Yeah, we had a whole uproar because, like, as you said, like on our home screen or the Explore page, like we wouldn't be seeing those images or videos that were often recommended to us before. And that was a lot of ways like where I could draw my inspiration from or find new accounts. And then all of a sudden they just like disappeared. I'm like, what's happening here?
Yes. And strippers tried to warn the pole dancing industry. And so the timeline is, sex workers and strippers were immediately affected by the shadow ban in terms of the hashtag ban and the account ban. Fast forward, slowly then permeating into the exotic pole hobby side of things, because a lot of strippers are also hobby polists.
Yes.
And a lot of hobby polists tend to go into stripping after they realize that there's nothing wrong with it and they're doing it anyways, and you're a culture vulture. It's fine.
That's another topic.
No big deal.
That's another topic.
So then the exotic pole industry started noticing the same effects on their accounts that the sex work industry had already been warning people about. So slowly but surely, the way that Instagram is shadow banning and censoring different accounts, and specifically sexually empowered women's accounts, is expanding and growing. And what ended up happening in the pole community is that Instagram then went on to shadow ban the athletic side of pole, the people who are wearing shorts that cover their entire ass and like usually like t-shirts. They're more athletic in terms of doing tricks and combinations, and without shoes primarily. It's more of a contemporary dance style, gymnastics dance style. The purpose of sexual intention is not the same. Yes, exactly. And so basically the pole industry took a very similar stance as regular society, where, well, it's not happening to me and you're a whore anyway, so you deserve it. And then lo and behold, oh, look, it happened to you because you're the same as me. Sexuality does not dictate morality, and you're just as fucked here too. And so the pole industry on the athletic side of things also got fucked with the algorithm and the shadow ban. And it ended up shadow banning every pole dancing hashtag regardless of what it was.
Yeah.
Whereas previously it was primarily only shadow banning exotic pole hashtags.
Right.
So all of a sudden now the pole industry gives a shit that anything's happening in terms of the shadow ban and the algorithm. And what I find is that that's very similar in regular society as well, where there's a very huge lack of communal empathy.
Yep.
And passion and compassion. And so it's interesting to watch the similarities between like the degrees of difference between sex work and pole dancing versus the degrees of difference in terms of societal issues that are happening specifically in America that have to do with this election, where it's social justice and equal rights versus monetary value. And so the idea and the similarities are kind of interesting to think about and reflect on from your own life, is because like at what point are you really that different from the person next to you? True. Other than what you're comfortable with. And if you're a consenting adult, then it shouldn't make that big of a difference. If I'm comfortable and whoever my audience is also comfortable, then we have a consensual transactional relationship, even on Instagram. Yeah. I'm posting these photos and hoping for likes in return, or hoping for shares and comments in return. That is still a transactional relationship. The difference is that because it's not a monetary transaction, people are more comfortable with it. And I urge you as a civilian to ask yourself why, because your time and your effort and your energy is just as valuable. And if you think that you expend less energy in your office job in terms of the mental abuse that you're probably going through, and then you compare it to what you assume is the abuse that sex workers go through, and there's definitely a lot of issues there, but primarily they don't come from the sex worker side. They come from how the civilian side treats sex workers. Exactly. And you can see how obvious that was when you look back on how the athletic side of pole dancing also treats sex workers and tries to continually divide themselves from that part of the community.
Or separate them.
Correct. Yeah, and I very much it's an othering attitude, when in reality we're doing very similar work. We're all dancing, we're all being like, you're going to be sexualized with whether you're doing exotic pole sex work and stripping or not athletic pole. Like, I guarantee you someone's looking at you doing a flip off of the pole and being like, damn, that bitch is strong, I'd fuck the shit out of her. You know, like that's going to happen no matter what. And the problem isn't with us being sexualized, and it shouldn't be with you being sexualized. The issue is with how people are sexualizing us. Right. And that's a clear issue consistently throughout society, because a lot of times sex workers lack certain rights and have to fight much harder for the same rights as everyone else, because we are the ones constantly being sexualized. And instead of people putting it back on themselves and looking, well, why am I sexualizing her? One, it's our job. You're welcome. Just pay us for it. But two, why do I dislike the fact that that's happening? And why am I blaming that person when I should be blaming the person who's sexualizing her? And it's not that we shouldn't be sexualizing sex workers. It's literally our job. Like, please continue to do that. Again, just pay us for it. But the animosity that comes with that conversation is what we need to change. And it needs to go from a negative conversation to a positive one. Right. And just looked at as a regular job. Because if it was a regular job, then we wouldn't have to be dealing with the same fucking bullshit in Instagram and how the shadow ban is affecting us.
Oh my God. Amen.
As we do in regular society, like when we don't get the same work benefits as any other industry, and it's harder for us to even be seen in the eyes of the law as people or as an industry. And so all of these things are constantly interconnected.
No, they are. I'm so glad you like connected all the dots there, because I was like getting confused at one point. But I was like, no, she just dialed it back then and she just connected everything. And I was like, I know. This makes sense.
It's a lot of different tangents. And again, going super slow at the beginning, kind of overly explaining just to make sure I don't lose anybody when I bring it all back. Because it's also the issue of like sex workers and women are more likely to be, and especially women of color or trans women are especially and most likely to be silenced and diminished first. Always. They will almost always also be the precursor to silencing and diminishing the rest of society. And so, again, going back to Instagram and the election issues, like that is a clear and direct result of the rest of society not caring about sex workers initially being shadow banned because it's not affecting them yet. And now there's a clear and direct effect to your Instagram and your profile that has nothing to do with your information or what you're sharing, and everything to do with silencing and diminishing your voice as a people, because our voices are stronger together. And unfortunately, especially in America, our government has proven time and time and again that they are no longer civil servants like they're supposed to be. And they're clearly using the government and the laws and changing things to make themselves richer at the expense of the people they're supposed to be protecting.
Oh my gosh. There's so much there's so much to unpack here. So much. And there's a couple points that you made, and I really want you to kind of elaborate more on that as well, because obviously, so you have, I was like, where do I start? Where do I go from here?
I remember at the beginning when I was like, it won't be that heavy. I totally made jokes.
That was before we started, but like, oh my gosh, I just love how impassioned you are by this, and I could feel the fire, and we need more voices like you. Seriously.
I just get mad. I'm like, why is it so hard for other people to like just care?
No, I agree. I completely agree with you. And I feel like maybe some people feel like they don't have as strong of a voice, or sometimes they might think that they can't make a difference, but we'll get into it.
Honestly, I feel the same a lot. I feel like I'm just screaming into a wall, and then every fucking once in a while, because I do structural integration on the side, which is a form of biomechanical physical release. It's like we'll call it massage. Right now it's not, but like that's the easy way to think about it is it's a massage. And most of my clients are over the age of 60. So when the lockdown happened in LA, it never really lifted. And because I have so many clients that are at risk, I made it a point I promise there's a point to the story, by the way, not to go out in public and to see people, like to see many people. Like I kept my circle very small. I only go out for like the 3 appointments that I have every week because they're medically related. And so I understand feeling like you're not doing anything, feeling like you're not doing enough, because if it were up to me, and I didn't have the responsibility to these other people in my life, I'd be out on the lines protesting every fucking day. But I have to redirect my energy as best as I can so that I feel like I'm still fighting for the people that I care about and for the issues that I care about, while still protecting not only like my own income when we're in the middle of a fucking pandemic, but also the people that count on me and are requiring my support in their own lives. So I understand feeling trapped between those two issues. But if all that you're doing right now is posting and sharing pertinent information to the issues that you care about, specifically and hopefully issues of race and racial inequality that's happening in America specifically, and also all over the world, issues of police brutality, again, all over the world, the corruption in government, like the issues in the LGBTQ community, how trans men and women are treated in society and within the LGBTQ community, like what's happening in Thailand, what's happening in Peru, what's happening in Lebanon, like what's happening in Ireland, Poland banned all abortion. Like, there's so much to think about and to care about, and it's so obviously interconnected when you start opening your eyes to other places around the world. But even if that feels overwhelming and too much, like super hyper focus in and pick one topic that you care about, that really feeds your soul or that really impassions you, whether it's because it's something that happened to you or because you're protecting your friends, what have you. Like you can still make a difference just by hyper focusing on one issue and sharing that information, and then having those difficult conversations and calling out people with correct information when they're hurting someone, regardless of intention. So I promise, like every once in a while someone will message me like, hey, I learned a lot from what you've been posting, thank you so much, which is again why I'm like, it's weird to think that I'm an activist, but I guess I am now because I can talk about it enough,
which is great.
But again, Yeah, it's just shit that I care about. And so it's the same kind of thing. Like you if you're a pole dancer, like look at all the times you've posted about pole dancing and then compare that to all the times you've posted about an issue that you care about.
Yeah.
Like the effort is along for the ride, you know, like you have to put the effort in to see the change and to see the difference that you're going to make.
Absolutely.
But I definitely encourage you to do it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Again, I go on tangents.
No, that's okay, because that's just all great advice too, because I even think what you said there about hyper focusing, even just thinking about like your own community, like here in Vancouver, there's so many issues, or even just in Canada as well. There's so many issues that we can kind of like hone down on, that you can also focus your efforts on, or at least do more research, or kind of yeah, you know, just like contribute in a way. There's always ways to kind of help out. So
yes, and just talking to your friends and family about the same shit. Like, it doesn't have to be a random fucking stranger. Or maybe you feel better talking to random fucking strangers, in which case you go and you troll the internet, okay? We need people like you too.
We need more trolls.
So, you know, life.
No, totally. And you brought up so many great issues. I actually just did an episode a couple of weeks ago now. I mean, at the time of recording, which will be released, next month. But on the whole issue with the anti-abortion laws that happened in Poland, some activism that's going there. So I'm glad you brought that up. But I guess we'll loop it back to this episode, because I want to take advantage while you're here to speak about some things. So I didn't know that you started off as a stripper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to speak a little bit about that, and then how you found your job in LA, and what it's like there, and how sex workers are treated in LA, and also the emerging laws as well? So
yes, all the things.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, so my play-by-play from the beginning. So I went to school in the University of Arizona in Tucson, and I have a Bachelor of Science in Equine Science with an emphasis in the racing industry, meaning horse racing and dog racing.
What?
And then I also have a Bachelor of Arts in Theater Arts with an emphasis in technical directing and set design. And then I have a business minor.
Whoa.
All of that matters because I clearly had a very specific job in mind.
Yeah.
And then I had a pretty bad accident. I was mauled by a dog.
Oh my God.
In college. Yeah, I mean, it's not the dog's fault. This is one more reason why people should take better care of the things in their life.
Yeah. Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
Have responsibilities to animals, but what have you. And so it basically affected my entire college career. And so I had to kind of change gears. And because I was almost done with all three of these different degrees within a 4-year time period, having to switch gears really kind of fucked me up mentally and emotionally. And I got extremely depressed and everything. But I was lucky enough that one of my friends, Kelsey Erickson, who still lives in Tucson, and shout out, she also owns her own pole and aerial studio. So please check her out.
Cool.
And she was stripping at the time and offered me pole dancing classes just outside of her home, just for fun, just to be like, you can still do stuff, like, let's get your arm back, you'll be able to dance it out, what have you. And I don't have a movement background prior to this, other than horseback riding.
Wow.
So she showed me a video on the internet of one of the original pole stars, who also has a huge role in bringing pole dancing to Cirque du Soleil. Her name's Janine Butterfly.
Yeah.
She was the
big fan.
Original pole dancer. I definitely in the Michael Jackson show, and I want to say she was also who convinced Cirque to include pole dancing in their Zoomanity show, but don't quote me on that.
So cool.
She's incredible. Check her out also.
Yeah, she's amazing.
But I saw a video of her. I was amazed by it. It was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my entire fucking life. Like, what the fuck? And I need to be able to do that. And so and Kelsey was the one to show me the video, so she offered me the lessons for fun, just so we could hang out, just like helping me as a friend and as a human to kind of overcome the shit that was going through my life. And slowly but surely, like we all do, I became obsessed with pole dancing.
Yes.
And previous to this, I hated my body, hated myself, like the MO of every girl living in America, or every minority living in America ever. If you're not like a white straight man, you're pretty much, and even if you are a white straight man, at one point, I'm sure you hated yourself too. So I was there.
We've all been there.
Right. And pole kind of helped me out of that, but I wasn't, and it was like one of those things where I'm obsessed and I need to do it more. And Kelsey obviously she's going to school, I was going to school. We had like our one lesson a week, but it was not enough. Needed more.
Need more, give me more.
needed more. And so she suggested coming with her to just a day shift at one of the clubs in Tucson, just so we would have more time to practice, and she would stay for the night shift after, and then that way I could offer her a ride, whatever. And like, I mean, if you've been on a day shift, you know the drill. It's the 3 people who are there already have girls. They're like already hustled out. Like, they don't give a shit about your face. You don't know enough to show them your ass. Like, you're just a baby stripper. So I'm there just working my ass off. And then by that time I had just graduated officially from college with all the same degrees that I mentioned previously, but more of an emphasis on the business side of things instead of the actual fun side of things, which is a bummer. But I had pole, so it was fine. And then I got a job offer at the racetracks in LA. So I moved out here. And before I left, everybody had already known of most of the studios in LA. So they were like, go to this studio, go to that studio, you have to train with this person. Oh my God, all the best strippers are there. Like, check out all these clubs. So like, everyone's just excited for me to go and live their dreams in LA. That's awesome. And when I was there, I found obviously studio environment. I found some of the clubs that I'd worked at previously, and just kind of really excelled as a pole dancing artist. I don't want to say I excelled as a stripper because it wasn't my intention to do that, and it wasn't really my dream at that point to really be as into the sex work industry as I am now as the baby stripper.
Yeah. Okay.
I was very much the one who separated pole dancing from stripping when I started both of them, especially when I finally went to a studio environment, because again, in Tucson at that time, there weren't really any studios open.
Right.
Which is why I went to the strip club instead. So when I went to pole dancing classes, I was there to be an athlete. I didn't want to do floor tricks. I didn't want to do low flow. I just wanted to learn hardcore tricks. I'm being a gymnast. This is my workout. Yeah. Stop talking to me. No, I don't wear shoes. Here.
Oh my gosh.
And then when I'm at the club, like, that's obviously my time to just slut it up on the floor and barely do anything. And like, thank you for your money, sir. Yes.
I love that.
I love more. Thank you. No, I'm not strong at all. I can barely lift my body. I'm so weak. Please save me, Captain Save a Ho. Thank you. More money. And then I'd use all that money for pole dancing studio classes.
There we go. Perfect.
You know? So then since then, in 2015, I quit my job at the racetrack. I started pole dancing full-time and teaching full-time. So now I teach internationally, again, hobby studios. And then since COVID, and probably within the last 2 years, I've really hyper-focused on sex work and the sex work industry and kind of equalizing that, especially within the pole community, and then also kind of focusing on how to change society's mind.
Okay.
But specifically, I noticed heavily when I was quote unquote growing up in the pole industry that I was one of the only exotic dancers that competed in exotic style at that time. And this is because like previous to my time was very exotic heavy. Okay. And then around when I started is when contemporary became king. And a lot of barefoot dancing really
started to emerge.
Yes, it really emerged and really took over, and it really expanded the pole industry as a whole.
Okay.
But with that expansion also came the virgin versus the whore mentality of othering, which we mentioned previously.
Yes.
In this podcast, I won't get into it too much again, but that really upset me because of my background and because I knew that the attitude existed. I had it again myself to a certain extent in terms of separating sex work from pole work. And again, I do believe that they're different, but the intention, or rather the history behind them, is very clearly on the same path. Like, pole dancing is the daughter of stripping. And sure, maybe if you're a pole dancer and you're into the athletic side of things, like, you can consider Indian pole and Chinese pole the uncles of pole dancing, but they're not the fucking mom.
No. Thank you for saying that.
And sex work is the mother of pole dancing, and the other two are uncles in the same way that hip hop and contemporary and gymnastics are cousins. Like, know your history.
Yeah.
And so it really upset me that so many people were trying to separate pole dancing from stripping and from sex work. And so really breaking down those ideas of, one, the need to other, and two, changing the direction of the questions that we get asked. So I'm sure regardless of your background or what you do in your life, if you have posted a single photo of you near a pole, someone has asked, oh, are you like a stripper or something?
Yes. Oh my God, that gets old so fast.
So fast. You guys are not clever. Stop doing that.
Yeah.
And also, why does it fucking matter?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you've never been to a strip club. Like, you've never seen porn. Like, you've never seen a nipple. And I know you have, because everyone has nipples.
Yeah.
You've seen yourself naked. You've seen a nipple. How dare you? Right?
It's so true.
So kind of like really helping the pole industry learn how to, one, have these conversations and how to redirect that problematic question into either just shutting it down entirely so they just go away, or if you're willing to put the energy in, how to have that conversation with that person to change their view, at least just a little bit, and maybe they won't ask that question again, and maybe they'll just change entirely and they'll be super pro sex work now.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll finally understand the difference between sex trafficking and sex work. Oh,
that's the goal.
Maybe.
That's the goal.
Maybe. Just for, again, those at home in the audience, sex trafficking is a coerced situation where the people involved are not in a non-consensual transactional experience, whereas sex work in its positive form, because sex work is work and sex trafficking is not work, it's slavery. Sex work is a consensual transaction between two adults.
Yes.
That happens in however that transaction needs to take place, whether it's online, in person, full service sex work, stripping, camming,
so many different forms,
what have you, just as a FYI, if that's a question you've ever asked. A few years ago, California passed the California Supreme Court had a case in it. And I'm not going to get into the super details of the case, but basically a group of independent contractors, truck drivers, were being used for a truck driving business.
Okay.
And the business actively hired them as independent contractors, but used them as employees. So they were all on schedules. They were told when and where they had to be. They were told what they had to accomplish. Nothing you're not going to tell a plumber when they have to be at your house and what exactly they're going to do. That's literally why you hired them. They'll get there when they get there.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll pay them for their time. Yeah. And they'll tell you what's wrong because that's why you hired them.
Exactly. So
this group of marginalized workers ended up suing the company because they were misclassifying as employees. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court of California, and the Supreme Court of California decided that, in fact, they were employees, and so they changed the definition of an independent contractor in California statute.
Okay.
And it went from being just whatever we know as an independent contractor, and now the new definition is that if your business definition and the independent contractor's job description match, then you are not an independent contractor, you are an employee. So if I'm a hairdresser and I work at a hair salon, I am now an employee. I'm not an independent contractor. Okay. If I am a stripper working at a strip club, I'm no longer an independent contractor. I'm now an employee.
Okay.
Yes, and this law was put into place with little to no concern on how it would really affect the rest of the independent contractor communities.
Yeah, for sure.
But with that in mind, I still, especially after having so many conversations, because at first I was very myself anti this law. I didn't want to be an independent, I didn't want to be an employee. I wanted to be an independent contractor. I wanted to make my own schedule, have my own rules, decide what I wanted to wear, what I wanted to dance to, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to sit here and try to sell your tables unless it suits me. And if you're the only one getting the money, then you can go fuck yourself, which is kind of what's happening. Previous to this law, again, because sex workers are constantly trying to just get the same rights as every other fucking job, our club environment was basically stealing wages, and most club environments do. In the way that, if you're paying a plumber you're not going to be like, oh, well, you came to my house and I opened the door for you, so that's going to be a $20 door opening fee. And I also gave you the work, so that'll be like a 10% tip out, thank you. Oh, and my boyfriend was playing music in the background, so if you could just give him like a 5, that'd be great, because, you know, atmosphere. Right?
Oh, man.
And so a lot of wage theft was consistently and still is consistently happening within the sex work and the stripping communities. And it's one of the things that people who are trying to unionize across the globe for strippers and sex workers are trying to change is, one, the stigma in general in society, and two, how much wages we have stolen from people who are not supposed to be managing us. So with this law, a lot of issues happened. A lot of clubs didn't do anything about it and maintained an independent contractor status with most of their strippers. But then threatens the strippers if they were to go to a lawyer to claim this misclassification. So there was a lot of subversion in the messaging in terms of like how sex workers were getting the information, how the information was going to affect them. Like it's basically what we're dealing with now, where it's a lot of misinformation getting to the wrong people who need the information, but they're trusting the source, when in reality, and in the perfect world, it would just be easier to access this. But because it's so difficult to really get, one, even understand how the fuck they wrote this law, but two, where am I going to find it, except in some variation on the internet of someone else's interpretation. So with that lack of information, in my opinion, came a lot of discord within the stripping community in LA to begin with. Basically between those of us who wanted to stay an independent contractor and didn't like the law change, and then those of us who wanted the employees, like the employee title, because it meant and means that we will be able to get better rights eventually.
Right.
Which is what we're working on now.
Yeah.
So I started in the one side where I didn't really want to be an independent, like I wanted to maintain my independent contractor status. So I stopped stripping when all of that happened. Additionally, I had personal shit happen in my life that was just like, oh, you know what? It's me time. You know,
that's allowed.
We all get there every once in a while.
That's
we
allowed.
all end up back, almost. We'll end up back there eventually. Hashtag 2020.
Right.
And,
the theme.
Right. And now, since having these conversations, since looking into the law myself, and again, because all of a sudden now I'm an activist, I really do believe that classifying strippers as employees will give us better and more rights if we can get on the same page. And so what's currently happening in LA is strippers are still considered employees. LA County entirely is shut down still, so strip clubs are not allowed to be open at all. If you're going to a strip club in quote unquote LA, you are not in LA. You're in the OC. They don't wear masks there. I suggest you run.
What? So they don't?
No, because they don't get. We don't get political in the OC.
God.
So like, I just, you know, it's really, I just don't want to, like, it hurts to breathe when I'm thinking about other people wearing a mask. You know?
My
God.
God.
So I don't.
Cringe.
My partner's laughing in the back.
Oh, God.
Those are all, by the way, real quotes that I heard from a woman on the plane recently.
Seriously?
Yeah, I'm dead serious. There's a real conversation sitting right next to us.
Oh, dear. Anti-maskers are another category of people.
Yes. Again, that lack of communal empathy.
Yes.
Also, otherwise known as selfishness. Anywho.
Yes.
So
back to unionizing.
Yes, so back to unionizing. So currently we have quite a few groups in LA, one that are trying to help sex workers and strippers in general, because we have been severely fucked over, for lack of a more appropriate term, by COVID and the pandemic and the shutdown.
Yes.
Any of our help from our governmental help or otherwise actively discluded sex workers.
Oh my gosh.
To the point where there's literally questions and you have to check mark a box that says that you have never done any form of sensualized work in your life.
Is that the language that they use?
Yeah, it's something similar to that. I haven't read it again since I think the last time was in June when I tried to apply again. But even me as a business owner who owns a health industry business was denied when I tried to apply for an SBA loan because me as a person has paid for taxes from my stripping career.
God.
And also pole dancing is considered a sensualized work. So a lot of times pole dancing studios,
Get out of here.
So if pole dancing studios and owners didn't have the proper connections to find somebody who could help them work through these issues with either the SBA loan program or the governmental loan program, what have you, then they were severely fucked over and marginalized because pole dancing is considered essential work, even though we're classified as a gym. And so not only are we getting fucked over because we're not allowed to open because we're group class gyms.
Yep.
We are also getting fucked over because we're classified as a pole industry as essentialized work. And so we cannot apply for most of these loans to help us. And
so you guys are getting royally fucked.
Yeah.
But there's more?
There's more. So in terms of pandemic assistance, I'm lucky in that I live in California and there's a huge amount of independent contractor work here, even with the law change.
Okay.
Thank Christ. So our pandemic assistance is different from our unemployment, but they run under the same umbrella. Okay. And they're pulling from the same
fund or
same tax fund. Yes.
Okay.
And so we have unemployment, which is paid for by employees, which again, if you were a stripper and your strip club actively made that change, you're now getting unemployment for the first time in your fucking life from a strip club, which is what should be happening all the motherfucking time.
Regardless.
Right? If your strip club denied you that right to employee titles, then you are fucked over and you are on pandemic assistance, which has been severely diminished to I think $300 a week or something, which if you live in LA, that's $1,200, which isn't even the price of rent for a studio apartment.
No, that's nothing.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
I'm appalled.
America. We can afford billions of dollars for our war machine, also known as our government, but God forbid we protect the citizens and give them free health care. It'll be too expensive.
Oh God. Thanks, Trump. Fuck. That's a lot of stuff right there.
Super
Holy
fucked.
crap.
So,
oh my God.
Anyways, COVID. So with all of these law changes and all of these changes to just society and how we live right now in general, because 2020 happened, we have quite a few people who are actively trying to make changes for the betterment of sex work within our community. Specifically in LA, I know SWAP LA, which is a sex workers outreach program. There's one in almost every democratic country. And then within major countries or larger countries like the US, we have one in almost every major city. So we have SWAP LA, there's SWAP Portland, SWAP New York, you're getting SWAP Brooklyn. New York, I think, has 4 different ones, each one for each borough, 5 boroughs. I can't math. But looking into sex worker outreach program, especially if you're a civilian trying to find a way to help marginalized people, it's more of a grassroots program that is actively and consistently and consciously making a difference and putting their money where their mouth is in terms of what they're fighting for who they're fighting for.
That's awesome.
If you're just looking for other things to donate to, sidebar, I highly suggest looking for grassroots programs and for us, by us organizations over the larger organizations that you hear of all the time.
100%.
And part of that is just because those smaller programs are more likely to help people directly, whereas the larger programs are more often trying to make consistent governmental national-wide changes.
Right.
So just the level of playing field is different between those two types of organizations. So I highly suggest and recommend grassroots, for us, by us. Do your thing.
Thank you for that. I'll be sure to plug those links in the show notes too.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll send you a list of all the random shit that I've randomly mentioned.
Please do.
SWAP LA is a really great one here. And then our other organization that's making a huge difference right now is Soldiers of Pole. And
Soldiers of Pole.
That consists Antonia Crane, who is a lawyer and a stripper. So everyone who works at Soldiers of Pole is a stripper or a sex worker of some kind. I know, a strip worker. I can talk. And they're currently fighting to unionize sex work and strip clubs within California and helping other organizations in other cities organize the same way to to unionize at a nationwide level.
Okay.
And so that is Soldiers of Pole.
Got that.
And the main person that I know best is Anne-Marie Davies.
Yes.
Who, again, I will suggest, yes, I highly suggest trying to get her on this podcast. She is an incredible human. She's extremely knowledgeable, extremely experienced. Mini elevator pitch for Anne-Marie Davies.
I will be reaching out to her after this.
Yeah, she is a sex worker advocate. She's also a sex worker herself. She's also an amputee. For the pole dancing industry, she was the original creator and owner of United Pole Artists, UPA. And for those in the sex work industry, obviously she's already well known. She's been stripping for longer than I feel like I've even known that pole dancing was a thing.
Yes.
And she's been consistently featured. And then on top of that, she's a huge advocate for sex work just in her own right, as well as how she works with other people. So I highly suggest, as a listener, please look her up.
Yes.
She also has her own podcast.
Yes, she does.
Stripper. And again, I'm just going to push for that collaboration.
I will reach out to her.
That's my fantasy. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Now I have a reason to reach out to her.
Yes. Like, Jordan wouldn't stop talking about you. She's minorly obsessed.
She was gushing.
Are you okay? And would you like to be? So.
I'm going to quote that and then send her that message.
She's a really good person. She's just a good person. She's a good stripper. She's a fucking great stripper. Her porn face is like next level. Like, it's, anyways, well, back on topic. So she's doing a lot of great work here in LA as well.
Awesome.
And again, more active work.
Yes.
With her and her team and the other people of Soldiers of Pole are really making it a point to unionize strippers and sex workers in California so that we can get better rights and stop the wage theft that's happening in clubs.
Yeah.
So going back to that real quick, what clubs have since started doing since the employee change is now they're charging us a sales fee.
Okay.
So we have to sell a number of champagne rooms or VIP tables, what have you, different requirements for different clubs, or we're not allowed to work on night shift.
Oh.
So we have to pre-sell those tables just to get a shift to begin with. Which, again, not how regular jobs work, even if you are a fucking sales job.
That's fucking ridiculous.
Unless you're in an MLM or a pyramid scheme, you know?
Oh my God,
that's the only time you have to buy product and sell product before you're allowed to make money.
So ridiculous.
So not only would they charge a sales charge, they would also charge the number of lap dances that I make. Mm-hmm. The first 4 to 5 lap dances, depending again on the club, is going directly to my hourly wage, and I don't make any of that money.
What? The fuck is wrong with that system?
Yep. So now I'm required to get at least 5 lap dances, or I don't get paid. And it's like literally 2 hours of payment. It's all that they pay, even though the shift is like still 6 hours. It's super fucked.
That is super fucked.
Something I'm still personally confused about, but that I would suggest asking Anne-Marie about is how strippers are being paid. Because in some clubs that I've heard, they're getting paid the same wage as servers, which in America, because we have a terrible tipping system, our servers get paid $2 an hour.
What?
And their tips are supposed to make up for the rest of the minimum wage.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No, it's super fucked.
Is that even allowed? Oh my God, I am appalled.
Yes, because our government cares about profits and not people, obviously.
Oh my God, like as a former server, I'm just like, that's like literally pennies. What the fuck?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Real talk. And there's so much wrong with America and our systems and what we do. It's fucked. So I've heard from some people that is how clubs are paying people, which means that, like, I'm working for 6 hours and I'm getting $10.
Basically.
Because taxes are getting taken out of that as well.
Yeah, literally, though.
And I have to pay for that myself within the 4 to 5 lap dances that I'm required to give just to be at the club.
Oh my God.
So now instead of paying a house fee and then tipping out, I'm paying a sales fee and still basically tipping out.
Jesus. So it's a lose-lose situation.
It is a lose-lose situation.
Big
because
loss.
No matter what, the managers and the owners of strip clubs are still actively able to manipulate the system without check. Because, again, society says that sex work is not work, so why would we care about you?
Jesus.
Until then, we see the same shit happening to servers, to independent contractors, to those of us who are relying on unemployment, like regular people things.
Yeah, jeez.
So again, as a civilian, if you're listening, I actively urge you to pay attention to what's happening in the sex work industries and to marginalized groups, because guaranteed it will eventually, in some way or another, happen to you as well when the government decides that you're no longer useful or a threat.
I am sorry for all of
That's
this.
okay.
I just feel like, wow, that system in the States fucked.
America!
I guess, with that, we can move on to some Q&A.
Yeah, I'm down for Q&A. Cool. I don't know what else I could possibly have to talk about. I feel like
we can go on for another,
the history of America.
We can go on for another few hours, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I usually try to warn people. I'm like, are you sure? How long's your podcast? I talk a lot.
Which I always welcome, so it's okay.
Again, I told you guys, Gemini, Sagittarius. It's just what I do. I can't help myself. I'm going to blame astrology because I can.
I'm here for it. So, okay, I guess we'll start with questions here. There's a few that came in. So, I guess, who are some of your pole idols?
Ooh, I have quite a few, and also not very many.
Okay. What does that even mean?
It really depends on my mood. So a lot of times I tend to actually be drawn to dancers that don't dance like myself, which means non-exotic dancers.
Great.
So I love Alberto Del Campo, who's a cirque performer, currently based in Las Vegas with his family. His whole family does circus. He's really incredible, but he utilizes. Are you looking him up right now?
I am on Instagram.
He's fucking incredible. He's fucking incredible. So the way that he just embodies physical acting within his movement and the quality of his transitional characters within his pieces it's just, as the theater kid in me, it just really speaks to my soul and my heart, and just so good. And then with that in mind, I'm also a huge fan of Yvonne Smink, who is both one of the kindest souls that you could ever meet in person. Okay. But also just the current innovator of our time, whereas Marlo was probably the previous generation's innovator, and previous to that, all the strippers that created pole dancing. Stripping is some other pole dancing. Yes. They would be the original creators. So I would call, personally, for me, Yvonne Smink is the next creator of our generation. Okay. Or of our most recent generation. And part of that is just because she has not only created a lot of really interesting transitions that are now commonplace in the pole community, she's just constantly, as an individual, expanding her repertoire to include any and every type of movement. Wow. Whether it's dance, whether it's martial arts, whether it's hip hop or b-boy style. She's just constantly evolving both her movement practice and her pole practice in a way that is just incredible to watch, especially for me, because I've been following her since before most people knew about her. Okay. Because I like to know things. I'm a huge stalker in terms of internet stalking on profiles, but that's what Instagram was made for, so I don't feel weird about it.
I need these tags later too, by the way.
So I really enjoy, those are probably my top two consistently impressed with these pole dancers. And then other people that I just would always recommend. I love Simona Royal, who's a stripper and pole dancer out of Australia. I love Marion Cramp, who is, if you're into flexibility, she's just She is a fairy. I don't know how she
Yeah.
exists. She's also,
Goals.
again, such a kind human. And she just has this energy about you where I don't think I've ever met anybody who doesn't feel safe around Mariam.
Okay.
And she's just one of those people where you're like, wow, if everybody was as accepting and as vulnerable and as open as you were and are, like, the world would be a better place. She's just one of those people, you know?
I love
And you
hearing
can
that.
see that. Yes, you can see that in her movement as well. Obviously, Marlo Fiskin is a
Yes.
huge innovator
Huge
for our industry and
inspo.
just an incredible person, again, as well. Other smaller people that maybe you haven't heard of, depending on where you're located, I really love Kitty Valor.
Okay.
I really love, Peach. Uh, I'm Peach Luray. There we go. My brain just stopped in the middle of that. I'm so sorry, Peach Luray.
That's okay.
And they're both out of the UK. I love you know when you like try to think of people's names and all that's coming up is their Instagram handle?
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm guilty of that. I'm like, wait, what's your real name? Like, guilty of that.
So, oh fuck my brain. Mish out of New Zealand. I'm just gonna say her Instagram handle. It's Miss Hellblazer.
Okay.
Blazer with a Z. But she is just an incredible pole dancer coming from New Zealand that is just like a powerhouse of a person and a powerhouse of a dancer. And she's just really incredible. And then in terms of people in LA, I love Drusilla Ray, who is a local artist here. Her and Tito Jane are, I feel like everybody already knows about them.
I love them.
They're, again, really great people, really beautiful pole dancers. I really admire the consistency that they put into their craft. And then like a mini shout out to my tour managing company. Well, not mine, but the one that I'm part of. Alanis Bowen Management has some of the best dancers,
Great
especially out of
representation there.
the US right now. They're
For
just,
sure.
everyone on that roster is incredible. And then on top of that, Jazzy K out of Switzerland, and oh fuck my brain, and then Anakia Jackson, who is again on the ABM artist thing. So if you just go to Alanis Bowen Management, you can find her there if you're not already following her, which you should be. So I don't know. I guess it was like I don't really have that many, but I could list a shit ton. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there. I feel like
they got a bunch of new follows now.
Yes.
Another question here too. I guess we're switching gears.
Yes.
What are some issues that you are currently following at the moment? Which I think is a big question.
It is a big question. Okay, so currently, the big one for me right now is racial injustice and Black Lives Matter movement and police brutality.
Yes.
Living in Los Angeles, I see a completely different version of police brutality that is not dictated or shown on media at all.
Yes.
It's really frightening, the shit that's happening in LA and some of the major cities. What's happening, like the National Guard is still in Portland. Like,
I know.
And this again has to do with how Trump has made it acceptable to be not only racist, but also proud within that racism. And that allows the racism and the systematic racism within our government and our government entities like our police to really be highlighted and obvious without any repercussions or accountability. And so for me right now, that's a huge one, especially like I'm technically a white passing person of color. My dad is Lebanese, and it took like obviously 9/11. I had some like just a shit year trying to be an Arab girl in 6th grade after 9/11 happened. Like I wasn't allowed in school for 2 weeks because my teachers were afraid of what kids would do and shit. And like, it was a whole thing.
Like, come on.
So I wasn't old enough to really understand what was happening. And I grew up in a small town, predominantly a white town. And so like, no one really even spoke to me about racism or how that was and is a thing.
Yeah.
I've personally never consciously treated anyone differently, but now looking back and growing up and really understanding the nuances of racial relationships, it's been really clear that like I've fucked up myself without knowing it, and part of recognizing that is having really difficult conversations and stepping back and being like, this isn't a negative conversation. Like you wouldn't yell at your coach for telling you what you did wrong in a pole pass or in whatever practice and training situation that you're in right now that would require a coach. But like, you wouldn't get mad at your coach for telling you to do better and what you did wrong and how to fix it. So I don't understand personally why it's so difficult for so many people to recognize that, like, not only is the Black Lives Matter movement and this issue of, in terms of systematic racism, especially against the Black community and other marginalized community, the indigenous population, like, you can literally throw a stone and there's some type of systematic issue with every minority, especially in America, because we're so anti-socialist here, which is insane. But again, not my, whatever, not this podcast. And so for me, again, it took one really intense racial event as an adult, a young adult, to make sure that I've never tanned since I was 18. Like, I have never been dark, and I'm doing that on purpose because I knew consciously that I was treated differently and better as someone with lighter skin. And again, it wasn't until recently that I was even able to identify why I did that. And it was on such an subconscious primal level that, like, and so obviously a racial issue. Like, so I basically got super tan for prom because my prom dress was tangerine. And then when I tried to go to college in Arizona, when I was going through TSA, they pulled me and tried to tell me that I was stealing someone's identity because this white girl in this photo does not look like me. And then the way they pronounced my last name at the time was extremely white. But if you're from an Arabic community, or really even if you're from a Latin community, you're more likely to pronounce the last name with the at the beginning.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know? And so, like, that was just terrifying to be told that I wasn't who I was because I tanned. Like, every other fucking white girl I was around got tanned. Why didn't they get the same shit? And part of it is because of the last name. Part of it is because when I'm tan, I don't look like the same person. Because then you can very obviously tell that I'm not a white person only. And so, like, really having that one experience, and then later in life recognizing why I made that choice, and not only why, but how that has then since privileged me to have these more difficult conversations from a different perspective than necessarily just how white people would have these conversations.
Wow.
Where what I find is, no offense, white people, but and I'll say we, because I was, again, one of you. I am one of you. I'm like half one of you. And before I was conscious about all of these things and really able to recognize them, it was this idea of, like, well, I'm going to tell you this hard thing, but then I'm going to also tell you all that you're doing a great job too. And like, kind of diminish the problem that I'm bringing to you. And so having a difficult conversation with a lighter skinned person of color, I feel has the safety that many white people feel that they need, because for whatever reason, and not really whatever reason, it does make sense that so many white people would assume that people of color are angry, and that every conversation around race is going to be an angry and divisive conversation. And that makes sense because you can clearly see how fucked society is and how terrible it treats people of color, specifically and especially darker people of color. And so you recognize that there's an issue, you recognize that there is anger there, and yet you still refuse to have the conversation. And this is a general you, not necessarily a specific you, listener. Having those conversations it's imperative. And again, coming at it from this idea of more of a coach-like conversation, where the coach is not going to let you get away with shit because they want you to be better. They're trying to get to the next level, the next stage, the next competition, whatever like metaphor you want to go with there. And coming into that conversation with a person of color, or with even just another white person, and taking the accountability and recognizing your own actions and just putting them outside of yourself and back into the community instead. Like, it's not about you, it's about all of us.
Yes.
And if you're actively claiming that you're not racist, and you don't believe you are, and again, I'm personally believe that humans are good at heart, and that as a base, we're good people. So if you believe yourself to be a good person, then it's not you that we need to fight, but experience is different, and that needs to be recognized.
Yes.
And on top of that, you need to use your different experience to change the experience for others. And you do that again by having conversations and by taking accountability for your own actions. People are able to change.
Yes.
I believe that, but you have to put in the effort.
Amen. Oh my gosh.
Anyways,
thank you for that.
30 million rant.
No, it's great.
What are you currently into?
I think we have some lighter questions here as well.
Yay!
Obviously, because you live in LA, do you have any celebrity encounters? If so, what are the best and the worst?
Oh, I have so many. So Jason Momoa is a doll.
Yes.
As hot in person. I'm not a huge fan of the people he hangs out with because they're kind of shitty to sex workers, but that's fine. No. They're also drunk, so it's one of those things. But they tip well, so I'm not that mad. Jason Momoa, you're beautiful. Thank you for your presence on this earth.
Agreed.
One of the guys from, this is not so much a bad experience, more just an experience. One of the guys, I never remember his name, from Sons of Anarchy.
Okay.
The big scary one with the mustache.
Okay. No, I know what you're talking
like a wrestler, but isn't a wrestler. I have no idea who he is. I tell people, and they know because they watch Sons of Anarchy. I don't. You figure it out. Google it, whatever. He came in and he got a dance from me. And I was like not in the right mindset to be hustling right then. Like at all. And he was like, you know, when they're trying to have conversations with you, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to, I'm not going to be your fantasy right now. Like, I just want to go back to like talking to the people I was talking to. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, about your $20. Thank you. So he kept being like, oh yeah, I bet you were a naughty girl growing up. Like, you know, that shit that they got. Like, that's what you're there for.
Yeah.
You chose the wrong night to get that from me though, sir. And I apologize. So I like straight up was like, no, I was actually a pretty good kid growing up. You know, because I rode horse. Like, I was just telling him my real life story.
He like probably does not want to hear that.
He did not want to hear it. I was like, do you want another? And he's like, no. Thank you.
Goodbye. That's
not
great.
His fault. That's fine for me.
No, totally. I have done that before too. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm not gonna just, like, sometimes when I'm in a bad mood and I'm hustling, I'm just like, I really shouldn't be here right now. And I'm just like so literal.
Yeah, like, it's just a lot. It's fucking funny. But yeah,
funny
I have a lot of celebrity encounters. Mostly, I know that this is a thing that people think, and I thought this again too. You're like, oh my God, you must see celebrities all the time. Do you talk to them? And you're like, no. And I feel like as a sex worker, especially not, because I don't want some fucking customer coming up to me while I'm on the street in my civilian clothes, not prepared to be like JordanKensley, and right now I'm just Jordan, like in fucking sunglasses and stoned and like in my pajamas getting coffee. Like, I don't want to talk to you, don't talk to me.
No.
So like that's kind of the attitude that most Angelinos take with celebrities.
Yeah, I agree.
Unless you're trying to do something and then you're like, excuse me, sir and or madam, would you please look at my pitch? Thank you. Hey. But again, that's not really the industry I'm in, so I don't have any fun stories. I'm sorry. That's my fun story.
I think that was great. I think a lot of sex workers would really appreciate that story.
Yeah, no, I was a really great kid. I have a college degree.
I think these next two questions came from cis males, if I remember.
Okay, let's do it, cis males. Let's see. I'm going to put you on a super high pedestal. Don't disappoint me.
Yeah, and you don't have to answer them if you don't want to.
If I answer these questions, I expect a Venmo and or a Cash App.
There you
for
go.
Minimum $20. It's at JordanKensley. Okay.
All right, first question from a cis male. What is the biggest tip that you've ever received from a client? I don't know why this is always such a question, and I always get it often.
That's always a question because men want to know who they're competing against.
Yeah.
And what level they're competing against. Like, if I'm a super high-end stripper and my biggest tip is $1,000, then someone who can only tip me $20 is not usually going to be like, oh, well, I can afford you. It goes back to that fantasy, you know, where
this is true.
I'm the hot girl in high school that you weren't allowed to talk to. So what's it going to take for me to talk to you?
Right.
Oh, you're still too expensive. Cool. So you're still the hot girl I can't talk to.
Yeah.
Anyways, the largest tip, I'm still waiting on that. Feel free to send what you think the biggest tip that I deserve is. Like, I'm going to put that back on you, sir. At JordanKensley, JordanKensleyPoll@gmail.com for PayPal. You better pay for the conversion rate. That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to actually plug this in the show notes below.
Yes. I'm a huge fan of big tip energy.
Yes.
And I expect that from you.
100%. Agreed. And this next one, again, I'm pretty sure came from a cis male. Will you ever consider escorting?
Actually, I have considered that. It's not legal in the U.S., so it's not something for me that I would personally do. I'd have to move to Vegas, and I'd rather do I would almost rather move back to Ohio than live in Vegas. But the reason that I've thought of it as before is because I have many friends who do full service sex work.
Yes.
Which does include escorting.
Yes.
Sometimes. Very not always. So having those conversations really... It showcases not only it forces you to kind of recognize your own boundaries, which for me, that is one of them. But it also recognizes how much privilege certain people have with the ability to do stripping versus other forms of sex work, or camming versus in-person sex work. There is privilege within the sex work ladder.
Yes,
and
there is.
Full service sex work, while still, again, being work, not everybody who does full sex work doesn't want to. Many people enjoy it in the same way that many people enjoy stripping, in the same way that many people enjoy camming. People enjoy being slutty, get over it.
Yeah.
But with that, full service sex work is also extremely dangerous, just inherently, and especially in places where it's considered illegal.
Yeah.
Like America. Additionally, because of SETSA and FOSTA, our full service sex work industry has become extremely unsafe, even more so than it already was. And a mini backstory, SETSA and FOSTA is a federally implemented bill / law that is disguised as an anti-sex trafficking law, but is really diminishing the sex work side of life to the point, and it's also making it harder to find sex trafficking victims to begin with.
Yeah.
So SETSA and FOSTA basically says that, and this is also why shadow banning became a very huge thing, is because of this law. It basically holds online internet platforms as legally responsible as the people in the transactionary sex work, if you will.
Yeah.
So if I'm a person who's looking to pay somebody for sex or for what have you, and then I'm also the person accepting that work, normally it would just be us who would be in trouble.
Yeah.
Now it is also the platform, like Craigslist, like Instagram, like Facebook, that will also be sued at the same level and then also higher, because now they're considered a pimp. And so many companies have then banned and stopped any access to the sites that most sex workers were using to
advertise.
Kind of advertise and interview clients. And specifically the interview process is what's really fucked now, because not only were there different groups so that we could check applications, if you will, against each other's experiences. Like, has anyone worked with this person? Are they good? Are they bad? Cool, won't work with them. We'll work with them. Thanks for the tip on the money. And now that has kind of disappeared entirely from our options of safety, it has made full service sex work entirely unsafe. And specifically, again, marginalized communities like the trans community are most affected by this, because many states in the U.S. still allow a trans panic or gay panic law, which is a law that allows you to legally murder a trans person or a gay person because you were surprised that they were trans and or gay.
How is it allowed?
Because America hates people.
Oh my god! Oh, this makes me so angry.
That's considered a socialist issue.
Jesus.
Because it's equality based.
Oh my god.
So, again, going back to full service sex work, I personally won't, but I do have a lot of friends who do, and that is another issue that, again, going back to that other question, that I'm very passionate about, because sex work is work, and again, we need the same laws protecting us that other industries have.
Yeah, that are afforded
again,
to.
it's a my body, my choice situation. But if and what I personally believe is part of the issue is if we allow my body, my choice, autonomy within sex work, then it will either gravitate into the abortion issue or vice versa. If we allow abortions to be a choice basis and not completely illegal like some states are trying to do right now, then we would have to, and almost immediately I would imagine that there would be multiple cases brought against the Supreme Court as an issue of bodily autonomy, specifically to do with sex work.
Wow.
And how we treat sex workers.
Yes.
So there's like a whole thing. Anyways, no,
there's so many topics.
But you can tip me for this question.
And I guess the last question is, any advice for moms who are sex workers? It seems so controversial to be both.
It's definitely controversial to be both. Again, that virgin versus whore complex, although technically you're not a virgin anymore. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you adopted. Either way, congratulations on your tiny human. I personally don't have any experience in this, and so any information or advice I give, please take it with a grain of salt, because I can't speak from my personal experiences. I can only speak from other conversations I've witnessed or have had myself.
Right.
I personally believe that you're in one of the toughest, I guess, questions for you to answer right now is how to be a mother and a sex worker, because we pride mothers. We love mothers. Everybody loves their mom for the most part. And if you don't, you're taught that you should.
Yeah.
Gaslighting and all that jazz. But then we hate sex workers and we hate women. But we're always somebody's daughter or somebody's mother, but we're never just somebody. And that's really the issue, the underlying issue, in my personal opinion, with this question. And again, why we need to change the narrative around sex work is that's still a job.
Yes.
And a working mom is a working mom is a working mom, whether you're at home working on your fucking house and with your kids, or you're on office working, trying to make money and then taking care of your kids, or if you're in a fucking club trying to make money and then taking care of your kids. Like, either way, you're putting in energy and you're putting in time and you're putting in effort to create the best life that you can for your children, in whatever that means to you. And so for me, the advice that I would give is, if you are going to do it, one, obviously be safe.
Yeah,
of course. Hope that you have a village supporting you, but I imagine that you probably don't. So I would include in the conversation very few people that you trust. I don't know how your partner feels about that. I would hope that they support you in that job as well as they would in any other job. But I know that that's also like a huge issue. And if you don't have a partner at home, then I hope that you have either a parental unit or a familiar unit or like a community unit, friends, cousins, what have you.
Yeah, some kind of support network. For sure.
Yes, to help you with not only taking care of your child, but also making sure that you're safe. I would highly suggest that you have some type of support unit before going back to work. In terms of whether or not you should go back to work, that is a question you have to answer for yourself.
Yes.
And dealing with the pandemic alone, I've had to fly back to the Midwest for 2 different occasions, both family emergencies. So I had to go. It wasn't like maybe I will, maybe I won't. And just leaving my cats behind was so difficult that I'm now currently reconsidering, should I even tour again? What about my cats? So I can only imagine having to try to make that decision when you have a tiny human baby or middle school age, any age your child is, it's still your child, and you're still gonna, I would still rather be hanging out with them than hanging out with people who ask, what's the biggest tip you've got?
Oh, gosh, I know.
No offense, sir.
Well, if this listener is listening to this episode, you can also listen to episode 43 and 47. We definitely touch on that subject. Actually, 43 is all about motherhood and returning back to work. So, as a sex worker, and also juggling a newborn baby. So that, and then also 47. 47 also touches on that as well, and trying to find that balance. So some resources there. But Jordan, before I let you go, where can we find you?
You can find me on the internet and on Venmo. Both are at JordanKensley, which is just my name, spelled exactly like that, no spaces or anything.
Okay.
JordanKensley. You can technically visit my website, which is JordanKensley.com. I have not updated it in 4 years, so it will look nothing like I do now and have no updated information. But you can reach me there. It still has a reach out section, which is nice. And then technically I'm on Twitter with the same handle. Basically, if you just look up Jordan Kensley, you'll probably find me.
We'll find you.
I was on TikTok, but I got banned within four videos.
What?
So I'm no longer on TikTok. And I don't know how Twitter works, so I'm technically on Twitter, but I don't tweet.
That's okay.
I would suggest Instagram. And if you're a man who's trying to follow me on Instagram, you will have to send me a tip in order for me to accept you. So you just tip me and then send me your Instagram handle, and then I will accept you into my private, beautiful domain.
There we go.
Which is mostly me talking about issues of activism that I care about.
Which is great.
But
oh my
gosh.
Almost
naked.
Bonus. Jordan, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for shedding light to so many issues that I didn't know how bad. I mean, I knew as a Canadian, I feel like I know a little bit about America, but then now I feel like, oh my God, it's even worse than I thought.
Yeah, well, again, our media does a shit job at really spreading light on the issue, and that has to do with unchecked capitalism.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
America.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show with me this week. It's going to be Strip by Sia on Instagram, also my personal Sia Steph, and new episodes, as you may know, every single Sunday. We'll see you and talk with everyone next week. Bye. You're listening to Strip by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia, artwork by Maria Bellandarama, music by Ted D, and photography by Ian Dabern.